Hey, this is Steve Zeltzer. I'm one of the organizers of LaborFest. And for those who don't know, LaborFest started in 1994 to commemorate the San Francisco General Strike of 1934. And we have a month-long series of films, we have presentations, we have music, we have art throughout the month of July. And what we have tried to do is bring together working people, talk about history, education, technology, and the future of workers. And in the course of LaborFest, one of the things that we have focused on is of course, the 1930s and 40s and the artists of the WPA, and who made a very important contribution to not just San Francisco, but world art in the development of the murals and other edifices that were built by the WPA in San Francisco and the Bay Area. So we've been covering that, and we have had historians and experts talking about it. We had a bus tour and walks, and we continue to have some walks. So in the course of this, we took up last year the effort to cover up, destroy the Victor Arnottoff murals at Washington High. And we have had meetings about them. We had it as part of our festival last year at ILW Local 34. And lo and behold, this year, we learned that not only are the Arnottoff murals under threat at George Washington High, but Bernard Zakheim murals are threatened at UC San Francisco with destruction. So we felt it was important to have a meeting, a panel, to talk about those murals and the relevance of those murals to working people and to the public, and the absolute critical need to protect them. So thanks for joining us tonight on LaborFest. We're going to be recording this event, and we'll have it on our website, so people who can't watch it will be able to follow it up later. And actually, this technology in the pandemic, the Zoom technology has allowed people to participate not just locally and statewide, but nationally and internationally. So we hope to do more of this at next year's LaborFest to make it more of an international LaborFest with events for working people throughout the world on the history and struggle of working people. So thanks for joining us. So we have tonight, we're going to be talking about those murals, and we have with us Nathan Zakheim, who is the son of Bernard Zakheim, and actually was involved in the construction of those murals. And he has graciously agreed to participate and to talk about the relevance of the murals today and the need to protect them and their history. And unfortunately, we don't have any other relatives other than him that were directly involved. So welcome to LaborFest, Nathan, and maybe you can kick it off and talk about the murals at UCSF and your relationship to them and what you think about what's going on now.
I've been involved with the University of California Medical Center murals, starting with Cole Hall, which I removed. My brother and I developed a method for removing them, which is the core to exactly how we would remove the Toland Hall frescoes, plus a whole bunch of other murals, frescoes that I've removed, perfecting it down to a science as to how to take them off without any damage and to reinstall them without any damage in such a way that they will be earthquake proof. So as far as Toland Hall murals are concerned, they were covered over with wallpaper by Dr. Nafziger and others wanting it there. And Dr. Sharens, who is on your team right here, has written a wonderful biography of Bernard Zakheim and a wonderful history of the Toland Hall frescoes. And he used to sit in class under those blank walls, not realizing, or perhaps not knowing, what he could have envisioned had the frescoes been present at the time he was working at graduating and getting his advanced degrees, et cetera, at UCSF. So as soon as the wallpaper was taken off the murals, they not only wallpaper, but it had been painted over with alkyd and house paint type paints, and then holes drilled into it, and pictures of the chancellors and whatnot hung in the middle of them. So it looked as though it was just a wall with pictures of chancellors hanging on hooks. However, when it was taken off, it took some time for Dr. Chancelik, who's featured in one of the murals, in the front of the right-hand front pointed one, where he's putting in bricks to offset the plague which hit Chinatown. And you see a bunch of Chinese corpses to the right, and he's putting bricks in to stop the plague. There's just an honorary thing. I don't think he had anything to do with actually stopping the plague that way. However, I don't want to take up too much time, but at the same time, once the murals were liberated, I spent about 5 years putting them back together again because they were damaged by the paint. And when they took off the wallpaper, they didn't even wash the wallpaper paste off, so it crackled off chunks of the fresco paint. So if you can see there's a video on the UC website that shows Dr. Chancelik giving a lecture, I think in 1966, possibly, where he looks rather bitterly at the murals and saying, they've been very damaged. Anyhow, after that, sometime after that, I was given a contract to remove the adhesives and etc. And we worked on several years to remove that, to bring them up and then do the in-painting necessary to bring the pictures up to their original high standard. We used fresco pigments, but we couldn't put them into wet plaster, so we used them into an acrylic base. So that pretty well took care of that. Then we were called in periodically over the decades after that to remove things like swastikas were put all over them at one point, and different things like that, a certain number of damages, water damage in one or two places. So we came in and spent some days, weeks, or even a month or so repairing them. So we have some good familiarity with those frescoes. But one of the most interesting things about them is that they were designed to be removed. And my father, I think I mentioned this in the previous, anyhow, my father brought me in at the age of 10 or so and said, and that was before the wallpaper had been taken off. And he said with his Polish brogue, his Polish accent, "Nathan," he said, "I want you to know something. These murals were designed to be removed." I said, "Really?" I looked at them and I didn't see any pictures. All I saw was wallpaper. And then he's pointing at them and saying they're designed to be removed. I looked at him saying, "Why aren't we going out to dinner? Why aren't we going to the zoo?" Or, but he kept on going, and he did this more than once, several times over the years. And he said, "Nathan, we painted them on panels that could be removed, and they're just held on. And I've done some further research to determine that they cannot really be called permanently attached, because even if the rods that were used in at that period of time for making stucco walls, plaster walls, after Latham plaster was no longer used, what they used was channels, half-inch by half-inch by 3/4 inch by half-inch channels, and they would put up the channels and wire them with baling wire, and then they'd put expanded metal mesh on them, sort of like the mesh that you have on groceries, like cherries or whatever, in a bag made of stainless steel. And then they'd plaster on that, and the plaster, instead of going onto the wooden lath, which often didn't last that well because of earthquakes and shaking loose and breaking the links, behind the tongues that went around it, it stuck very, very well. So that was attached to the wall. On the wall side, I'm not quite sure, but I probably in some sort of holes. And then, but on the fresco side, L-shaped, the rod was made L-shaped. Remember, we're looking at, you just hold up your finger to yourself and say 3/4 of an inch, that's not much. And by half inch, that's even less. L-shaped. So they just tied them onto the back of the frescoes with wire. Now, in legal situations, if you have a painting, like let's say a Rembrandt, and it's hanging on your wall on a hook, when you move, they can't say that belongs to the building, and they can't say it belongs to the landlord. They can't say it belongs to the wall. It belongs to whoever put it on the hook. But if that same Rembrandt were bolted to the wall, then it could be argued that it's a permanent part of the wall, although it would be arguable, you know, because it wasn't intended to be. But if it's part and parcel of the wall, then it belongs to the building and the landlord owns it. In this case, the argument was, well, are they removable? Yes, they're highly removable, and they're not even attached with anything more than a wire that's thinner than the wire on a paper clip and much softer. So now that winds that one up. So our project, and I noticed that Paulina Iliova, who's a wonderful archivist, a wonderful human being, and we gave her what, you know, we could have sold to Stanford for $70,000, a stack of archival material on those murals. And she knows quite well that we also had previously put in bids, not bids, but feasibility reports for removing the frescoes, several, about 3, but she's aware of 1 or 2 over the decades. So it was not as though that there was no knowledge that they were removable or that I had been given secret instructions from the artist how to remove them. So, so at this point, they hired 2 companies to do an assessment, and the assessment came up with, yes, they're apart from the wall, but they went about it in such a way that they considered that the removability was so risky that the murals would be so badly damaged that they wouldn't be reinstallable when it was finished. Well, I have a whole history of removing mural frescoes in such a way that they are reinstallable before I even take them off the wall. I do all the consolidation of the front and the in-painting first and put canvas on the front, and then put a big drawbridge on the front, tip it down, and then consolidate the back with chemicals. When you're finished, you could drop it 20 feet and it wouldn't break. So anyhow, that I think is about as far as I can go. Right now, there's a thing called an RFP, request for proposals, being generated by the University of California, executives, designers, architects, planners, and all the necessary people for taking murals.
So Nathan, did you ever think that there would be a proposal by the University of California, the Regents, or the management, the chancellor, to actually destroy the murals? Is that something that you were prepared for or thought that would happen at these with these?
No, to me it was unthinkable. Because, of course, we have to take into account that very nice gentleman, excellent human being, Brian Newman, it came in from Oregon, and all that means nowadays, and I don't think Portland, but maybe, and he was working at the University of Medical up there. He came down, and I don't know if it was his idea or somebody's idea, but they said, we got to get in experts and see if they can be taken out. And they determined that it was too risky and much too expensive. They wanted like $8 million, which, just between you and me, is not that unreasonable for the greedy art restorers of my acquaintance. But I'm not one of them. I'm a poor boy, and I do things cheap. So I gave them a quote not to exceed 1/8 that amount. And I said I can guarantee that I can do it. And I sent photographs from a project that I did in 2010-11 in Houston at the MD Anderson Cancer Building that was being torn down. And I took out a mural that was 48 feet wide, 16 feet high, and curved like a J. You know, it's one of those crisscross hallways where it's rounded. We've all seen those, right, in older buildings. A rounded thing. So mural went around the corner, took it off without any damage. And it was transported 1,000 miles where did it go? It went into New Mexico, into Artesia, New Mexico, where the sponsor was sponsoring a new library. It was reinstalled there. So that means if that can be taken off, these are sort of things you can do in your sleep. I wouldn't do it in my sleep, but I'm just saying. Yes, I can't hear you.
So thanks for that, and we'll get back to you a little bit
So
later.
okay, to answer your question, I was astonished that they thought they had to be destroyed. And all I could get from it was, when I first talked to the university, was that there were people who objected, as in Washington High School, objected to the ethnicity of the poor Native Americans that were on one side being sprinkled with holy water by the priest, and on the other side given fire water by these helmeted soldiers, and stuff like that. But now a new incident has come up, which has completely, I hope, transformed the playing field, and that is the presence in one of the panels, panel number 8 on the right-hand side, showing Southern California medicine. The right-hand side is Northern California, the Southern California medicine. Biddy Mason, who came to California as a slave, as a child slave. And you might say, well, was she a slave in California in the early 1800s? You betcha she was. Why? Because California didn't have slaves. It wasn't a slave state. But if you had slaves and you brought them, they didn't tell you that you have to free them, and they didn't say that they're no longer your property or whatever. It was just one of those crossovers where Biddy Mason and some other slaves belonging to this guy, who probably wasn't all that bad of a guy, but who knows, came in, and at first she was a slave, but then when California did banish slavery, she was freed. She got educated.
Okay.
But anyhow, here's Biddy Mason, was the only Afro-American health practitioner of any shape or form in California. She came in after slavery. She went to school. She was brilliant, apparently, and she became a nurse or a midwife. But that was just the least of it. From midwife, which is sort of like a doula nowadays, not a big deal, she went up and became the assistant to one of the top surgeons. And you can see her with that top surgeon in the fresco panel.
So this is really the history of medical history of California in these murals. So the idea that they would try to destroy these murals is quite a shocking thing. And also joining us is Tammy Washington, who is a great-great-granddaughter of the Bridget Biddy Mason, and she wrote a letter to the Los Angeles Times about her concern about protection of the murals. So let's hear from Tammy.
Where are you hearing from?
Tammy Washington. Tammy Washington is here as well. Let me.
She's a great. Is it great or great granddaughter?
Let me unmute her here. If I can find her here, let's see. Okay.
I had a great conversation with Jackie Broxton at the.
Mm-hmm.
You know, interesting to know is that Biddy Mason started the first African AME church in Los Angeles, which is now huge, in her living room of her house. And now the AMA church has created a Biddy Broxton Foundation, which is helping foster children, presumably connected with the church, and they raise money and take care of them. They're building a new center, and they want, if they said, if they're going to destroy that murals, can we have that panel? I said, I'll make it easier. Why don't we take a photo reproduction on canvas and all free without charging you? I'll glue it onto the wall when you build your new building.
Yes, hi.
Hi, good. Glad you could join us.
Absolutely. It was interesting listening to Nathan Zakheim. Yeah, hearing about the murals and moving the murals. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Biddy Mason.
Wow.
And my mother's father was her youngest daughter's mother.
Oh.
So of course, I'm very interested in what happens to the mural. And when I first learned about it, I had no idea that this was actually going on until it was brought to my attention by Kevin Waite. And
the co-author.
yeah, yes. And he's done a lot of research on my great-great grandmother. And so since I have been interested and I wanted to, you know, lend my voice whichever way I could.
Yes.
I think I can't understand why the university actually would want to get rid of the murals. I think it's like a gift to have it on their campus, and there's such beautiful murals. And this one in particular, the story behind it certainly needs to be told. And when I was growing up, the history that was there for me, it wasn't, I mean, Black history. A lot of it was not positive. It was the pictures, the imagery was just something you didn't want to see. It was just something that, you know, you were embarrassed, a lot of things. But with this mural, it tells a different story. And I really think it is an opportunity for like a new conversation and beginning on Black history. And not just Black history, but early California Black history. And I'm just amazed at the fact that Grandmother Bridget is the star of the show, in my opinion, because she's right center in the mural. I don't know if she was laying hands or if that, you know, was the idea behind that, but when I first saw it, I was like, it looks like she's laying hands on this very sick, afflicted patient. And that is something that is given to, you know, like healers in the highest esteem. So she was like the moving object in that mural for me, because my eyes, you know, her pigmentation, everything around her, she's the center and she is the star of the mural. And with that comes the story, you know, her history. And I think a lot of people are aware of it. She started as a slave, and the way it ended, she ended on a high note, you know, with wealth and the ability to help others. She was a philanthropist. Yes, she worked with Dr. Griffin. She had healing power. She knew about herbs, which I think was something that roots back to Africa, you know, and the way that she practiced the remedies, the concoctions, whatever it was to heal people. And I had read that she even, you know, helped with patients that were afflicted with smallpox. Now, I'm sure there were many people that did not want to even be anywhere near a patient with smallpox, but there she was. And she would, you know, lend her hands and her know-how to help these sick and suffering people. And I think also because born into slavery, please excuse my voice. I think I'm getting a cold, and I hope it's not COVID that I'm getting. But I have been coughing, and I hope not. But I kind of lost my train of thought. But what I was saying is that she liked to do things in the sense that she's helping other people. And because she was born in slavery, she witnessed a lot of negative things, but I don't think she really, I don't think she internalized that. I really think that she gave herself like positive affirmations and turn all of the negative things that were around her into something positive so that she could endure it, because there was so much put up on her. And it was, I mean, did she ever have any time for herself? The idea of her walking behind those, covered wagons, eating the dirt and the dust and just walking for the 1,700 or 2,000 miles and taking care of the kids, the wagons, the livestock, everything that was put upon her, but she managed to endure it. And she just had that sense of resilience. And while this was happening, when she's walking, my great-grandmother was just, like a baby. So you're taking care of everybody else's children, and then you have your own that you have to tend to as well. So it's a mural to be admired and the story to be told. And I think we are very lucky to have it here in this area. I remember seeing it years ago, but I had no idea that I was related to the person in the mural. And I just remember having fixed eyes on the person. When I saw it, I actually thought she was a slave person. But I know that I just was centered on her. And I think we're lucky to have it here in the area. And I think when history is rewritten and it's in the books, that perhaps students for field trips or just family trips or whatever can go up and look at the mural, and have discussions and learn about her story. And especially for Black children today, who a lot of them, because I work with children in the schools that have low esteem, self-esteem, and not positive images, that they relate to. I think it's a good thing that Black history here in California can start with this mural. It's very positive. The story is positive. It's very encouraging and enlightening. And I just think more stories like great-grandmother Bridget is what kids need to hear. And not just Black kids, but, all different races of people, because of the lack, I believe, in history, just history in general. There's a lack of appreciation for different things. I mean, if you look at an image, everybody interprets it differently. But there's always a story behind the story. And I don't know why they would want to, I know they do want to build something else, but the idea of putting the mural, I think they were saying they were going to put it in some kind of a device where you can look in and see it or whatever. Well, that's just like if you're going to go see a movie. You want to go to the theater and see it on the big screen. You want to hear the surround sound. You want to get that experience. You don't want to watch it on your cell phone or, something the size of a matchbook. You want to get the whole experience of it. So I am for preserving the mural, and it is early history, and it's early medicine. I was reading the other day, something I hadn't read, is that grandmother Bridget actually had her license for a physician that she had paid $10 for. And I think this was in 1862 or so, but she had her license, and it was for you know, for midwifery and also for the healing arts. And actually today, these things would be called alternative medicine, but it's still medicine. And she was known for her skills and ability to heal people. And I think this is why she was so successful. When she saw opportunities, she took it. And it's not like if you're illiterate and can't read, I know she signed with an X, but this just shows that people who, and I know people who cannot read, and it's always like, you can always go back to school, you can learn, you know, you can do this, you can do that. If you need a skill, you can go on YouTube. There's all kinds of teachers on there. But you have to want to have that desire. And Grandmother Bridget did. Every opportunity that was given to her, it seems like she took it. And there was like a guardian angel there with her, you know, for things to happen, you know, even when she was freed. That could have gone either way, you know, given the Dred Scott decision a year later. So it's like she was right on time with everything, and just knowing what to do and how to seize an opportunity. Even illiterate, she learned to speak Spanish. And she had very powerful teachers, you know, to help her along with the governor of California at that time, Pio Pico, who also was in real estate. And, you know, even at the end, up until great-great-grandmother died, she was very, very wealthy. And she helped as many people as she could. It was always this giving back. So, you know, the history there is very important. And I know myself, I had someone ask me, this was a couple years ago, actually tell me, they said, and this is a prominent person in the area, and he said, if you continue to give things away, you're never going to have anything. And I said, well, there's always somebody that needs something more than myself. And I know I can get it back. And maybe they don't, you know, have the means or don't know how to do that. And he still said, yes, but if you continue to give things away, you're not going to have anything. Well, this person I'm speaking of has a lot of stuff. And it's like, what are you going to do with all that stuff when you're gone? So after he said that, it kind of bothered me because I asked myself, yeah, why do you always give things away? Why do you give things? You're not, you know, you're not rich, you're not wealthy, certainly not like your great-great-grandmother. Why? Well, when I discovered the relationship to great-great-grandmother, and I've been reading everything since I discovered this, I know I give things away. I am the philanthropist with no money, but it's somebody else needs it more than myself. And that's why I don't see anything wrong with that. And I always get it back more than I gave away. So again, that's the open hand. You know, if you're giving, you're going to receive. But you don't do it for that purpose. You do it because it's from the heart. And this is what Grandmother Bridget was about.
Amen.
So there's a lot of things that I can see, like different traits down in the family with her daughter, Harriet, who was my mother's grandmother. And my mother's father used to tell her that she was a lot like his mother. And I can see that from some things I've read. So it helps in history for people to know who they are, where they came from, so they can have feel more rooted in different things. Because learning that just answered just a gamut of questions for me. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? I started out in nursing school, but I dropped out because I wanted to go into mental health. And my mother was a nurse. And it was always like we were the givers. My mother was a magnet for people to be around her. And it was like, I can just imagine how it was, you know, being around great-grandmother, because she had that personality and she had the, you know, she possessed all this resilience.
Okay.
And I'm sure she had advice for others.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that contribution, Kemi, and we'll get back to the contribution your Biddy made to you and many others, which actually this attack on this mural have brought this history back to the people of California. So it's had the opposite effect. They thought they would be destroying it, and in reality, people are now learning about it. We also have Robert Schuring with us, who is the author of the Bernard Zakheim life, and he talks about the murals. Why don't you join us?
Yeah,
Robert?
I was reading that last night.
Why don't you join us, Robert, and your thoughts about what's going on now and the production of these murals.
Thank you for inviting me, Steve Zelson. And thank you, Nathan, for your introduction of my books. I want everybody to know that I am a physician and surgeon specialized in diseases and surgery of the eye. The specialty is known as neurology. I graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's degree in science, and then entered the UC School of Medicine in San Francisco, 1959, in the class of 1963 when I graduated. I never knew about the frescoes because they were painted over. And Steve, I hope you will get the picture that I sent to Adam Gottstein showing me in the room in a lecture with only painted walls. I superimposed a fresco in the proper place in a second photo just to show where they were under the wallpaper. Now I'm making a point. When I found out about the frescoes and the history of the Zakheim family, I actually wrote 6 books, not 1. And the book on Zakheim is actually 800 pages. These are big works with illustrations and footnotes meant to immortalize this history. Now, why do I say immortalize? Because this history will be lost if it is removed. And I want to tell you that my mother from Eastern Europe came to America on a ship, but it landed in the New York harbor on the 4th of July. And it anchored in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, which had been given by the country of France to America. Do you think it would have been the same experience if they had taken the passengers into an auditorium to show them a video of the old Statue of Liberty? Of course not. It's ridiculous. These frescoes tell the story like none other, and they cannot be removed or you will forget history as everybody else has. So this is a foolhardy idea that a video can make up for the real McCoy. The second thing is, when medicine was practiced in California at the time of the formation of the university, 1868, through the establishment of the medical school and center, medical school was known as a proprietary school. That means that Steve Zelzer could have applied and said, I want to be a doctor because I love medicine, and they would have trained you to be a doctor. Well, at that time, Hugh Toland was the biggest surgeon in San Francisco, had established his proprietary school. And the school that was later to become Stanford was established by Beverly Cole, an equally talented surgeon. And they established medical schools until smart people around them and some of the trustees of the university said that Hugh Toland should give that school to the university to make it a state University of California medical school. He wanted to be the name of the school, and they said, no, no, we don't do that. We'll make you the dean, and we'll call it the University of California in San Francisco, which it did. Now, the incident provoked people who were very bright to think not anybody should be able to walk up to the proprietary school to become a doctor. You should be trained in science and math and physics and chemistry and liberal arts and have a degree from the university when you apply as a pre-med. California, the UC San Francisco was the first university in this country to require a university degree of its pre-med applicants. And many years later, when Johns Hopkins became a university, and many years after that, when it established its first medical school, it established its medical school in the style of the University of California. So the UCSF was the very first in America to require scholastic excellence in science. And as you see, the technology of medicine and in the future is the key to where this university will go. But if you don't know where you're going, you won't know when you get there. And I believe that this is the message why the university must keep its history. Now, if they destroy this magnificent artwork, there's only one other way to learn about the history, and that's my book. And I'm not a commercial person, so the book is on a website and it's freely available to anybody in the world to not forget. I want to tell you that in the first class of this school was a young lady named Lucy Wanzer. Lucy Wanzer applied to medical school and was turned down because she was a woman. They didn't take women. She sued, and the Regents backed off and admitted her. She was the first woman in the first class, and she was teased and taunted by Beverly Cole, director, dean of surgery. And he said, all right, we'll accept you in our class, but we're going to take your ovaries out. And she thought about that and said, well, perhaps that would solve one problem, but before you take my ovaries out, I'm going to take your testicles out. They became friends eventually, and Lucy Wanzer not only graduated in the first class, she became the first woman in the San Francisco Medical Society. And she became the first president of the San Francisco Medical Association. This is Phyllis Wrightson, and this is Bernard Zakheim. So the future of medicine at the University of California and in California depends on not forgetting our roots. I hope my little discussion of history has helped you all to know. Go to my website, robertssharonsmd.com. Download the books, they're free for you to enjoy and share with your friends. And thank you for having me as your guest.
He's also a descendant of Bernard Zakheim and has been involved in helping to support and defend this mural. And why don't you talk to us about your experiences, Adam?
Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for having me on this distinguished panel. I'm very happy, of course, to share this time and space, not only with my esteemed uncle, Nathan Zakheim. No one else has the kind of information regarding these particular murals as Nathan does. We're lucky to have his expertise as far as I'm concerned. Of course, Dr. Sharon's, and I also know that a number of people from the Biddy Mason Foundation and just the people who are making Biddy Mason the core of their research. It's been a wonderful group to add to the support, the growing network of people who are rising their voices. There's been a really excellent groundswell and outcry for the initial decision to force the family to try to come up with the money and other resources that it would take to remove the murals on our own. Clearly a daunting task. I also just want to say I'm honored to be on this panel with Temi Washington. Her comments were beautiful, and it helps to give a human voice to some of the people that my grandfather depicted in his murals. We're still trying very hard. I know that Dr. Sharon's and Laura Vosson George and Kevin Wade and others are trying to establish a definite connection between Biddy Mason and the woman depicted in Bernard's murals. We're still working towards that goal. The only thing that I really have to contribute is to say that I am representing the family as an entity, if you will, otherwise known as a stakeholder in this campaign. To that end, you've got the UC Medical Center, the initial decision that they made and informed us through a letter from a law office that we had 90 days starting June 4th to come back to them with a written proposal as to how we would remove these murals at our own expense. The second, so UCSF is one entity, the descendants of Bernard Zakheim is a second one, and then writing in a little bit later to the story is, of course, it's already been mentioned, the GSA, the General Services Administration, and thank goodness for their presence because they are establishing an ownership percentage that apparently is up to a certain amount of interpretation. We're in the midst of those dialogues now, but it has clearly halted the sort of outright marching, if you will, of the deadline, and has added a key element to the discussion. We're very happy that the GSA is present. Clearly, from this point going forward, as my Uncle Nathan had mentioned, there will be RFPs going out for interested parties who think that they would be able to conserve, move, store, and eventually either reinstall at the UC Medical Center or in some other public place these fabulous frescoes. So as I say, we're in the midst of that now, and I don't have a whole lot more to add. I'm neither an art historian nor am I a technician, but here's what I am trying to do. I'm trying to increase public awareness. At some point, it could very well be that we'll be looking for some serious underwriting from deep pockets philanthropic organizations that may end up helping us if it turns out that the UC Medical Center is unwilling or unable to fund the removal of these murals, and that's assuming we all come to that agreement. And to that end, I have posted on Facebook and through emails word encouraging friends, family, art supporters, etc., to consider emailing the lead at the UC Medical Center. It's a gentleman with whom we're in good faith discussions at the moment. My Uncle Nathan referenced him earlier. His name is Brian Newman. And if you're willing to just jot down his name and his email address, I'm sure he would be delighted to hear from all of you as to just how much you would like to support the idea that these murals need to be saved. Brian Newman is a vice chancellor. He's also on the real estate committee, planning committee for the UC Medical Center. Again, his name is Brian Newman. His email address is brian.newman@ucsf.edu. And I'm pretty available. If people want to find me either on Facebook or email me, I'm relatively easy to contact, but I want to keep my comments short. I, again, have just enjoyed listening to each and all of you speak tonight. I'm so glad that there's a pretty healthy looking crowd in terms of numbers here on this call. So Steve, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. And we're very happy that we could hold this panel because, as I said earlier, the attack on murals, unfortunately, is not only with the Bernard Zakheim mural, but in San Francisco's, the recent attack has been on the Victor Arnautoff murals. And of course, they're not without a long history of controversy and efforts to destroy the murals. And that has been part of our history as far as Labor Fest, exposing these murals and the effort to shut them down in the 50s and to destroy them when they were being when many of them were being done, including in the 30s. And joining us is Lope Yapa Jr., who is the vice president of the George Washington High Alumni Association, and he has been a central force in coordinating and organizing the defense of the Victor Arnautoff murals and fighting to make sure that they're defended. So welcome to this panel on the Bernard Zakheim murals and the fight to defend them.
Thank you for everyone who's stepped up to help preserve and protect the murals, to help the Zakheim family. When this mural issue was brought to my attention, I immediately said, we need to help. And when I mean that, it's that our struggle to preserve, protect the murals at George Washington High School, and now subsequently the name of the school, we have discovered in the last year and a half, 2 years, that this is a national pattern going on, a pattern where it doesn't matter who's the source, or the reason why, but there seems to be a current issue on changing or erasing our history, whitewashing murals. And at the end of the day, it comes to the question is, who does that help? I mean, how does this benefit anyone, particularly when you have precious art in consideration? These are not just crummy images. I consider the Zakheim murals, the Coit Tower, the George Washington murals, and other places as a treasure to our history and to our art. And so I stepped up, I got involved, met Adam and others, including Laura Voice and George, and we are trying our best. And I think we've done pretty good work in the last, Adam may tell you more, in the last 4 to 5, 6 weeks, whatever that's been. And we just think that this is nuts. If anything, you can build new buildings, but you can't build treasure art like this. The idea that you would not have a consideration of being responsible, the caretaker, having the joy of having these murals for the last 80 plus years and say, oh, tell the Zakheim family they have 90 days. I found that was just despicable. I just couldn't imagine that happening. You can build, you could remove, you could do whatever, but the whole important thing is that you honor the work and the history. And having a 2-hour discussion with Tammy Washington the other night, it just furthers my resolve. And I do have a full plate, by the way, but this cannot be ignored. I have to tell you, I can't tell you how many UCSF resident doctors or people who work there, or patients, we all know about these. We didn't know to the degree, but we all know that there was something important about these murals. And again, whether you call it racist or you call it ignorant, it doesn't matter to me. It's just that you need to take first the step of appreciating something you may not even understand, but taking the responsibility to find out how important they are. I would say that they should call this Zakheim Hall, Toland Hall, Zakheim Medical Center, whatever. That's how important these are to me. Because of the legacy. I mean, how many people have walked through those halls and those environments and kind of got inspired by this? I have some contemporary doctor friends of mine who said they just can't even imagine can't even imagine this is even a thought by the UC, where it is the Board of Regents or the head of the UCSF buildings. And you can imagine, and I don't want to hear about seismic retrofit. I don't care about any of that stuff. Most important thing is priority one, these cannot be just whitewashed, erased, or ignored. Sorry I'm over speaking, but I am sort of passionate about art and history. I'm a professional filmmaker, and filmmakers always try to do the best to tell the true story. And there's more to that, those murals, than just what you see on the wall. There's a lot of history there that should be honored. And I just find it really just disrespectful for our society, our culture. We don't teach art. We don't teach history anymore in schools. And this is the next generation, last 5 decades, where they're not even informed enough to have a critical thinking discussion. Some of these people that make these decisions and want to whitewash or remove things. And I'm not talking about just San Francisco. This is happening throughout the country. We're discovering this more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Yappy. And it's in the past, Labor Fest had one presentation on the story of Archie, who was a slave, who was also brought to California by his master from Mississippi to work in the mines. And the story of him was that he found out that he was free in California. He escaped from his master, and at that time, the California Supreme Court was controlled by the Democrats, Democratic Party politicians, and they supported slavery, and they ordered him to be returned to his master. So he was recaptured, and they were going to bring him on a boat to take him back to Mississippi. And there was an organized effort to free him, and it was successful. And Archie was able to stay in California. But these stories, this history, is important for the people, the working people, the real history of California. And I think the same is with this mural and the life of Biddy, Bridget Biddy Mason. Who would know about her life? Who would know about her coming to California as a slave and struggling to become a midwife, struggling to make a contribution to our state and the people of California, if not in these murals? I mean, this is really a testament to her life and her struggle. And I think Bernard Zakheim was interested, obviously, in making that a story that could be told to all the people of California, to the real story of California. And that, I think, is what really is criminal in trying to destroy these. And when we talk about the Regents and Governor Newsom, who is also in the Regents, and people maybe should write to Governor Newsom, how dare the state of California, the UC system, even talk about destroying these historic murals? I mean, it's really an insult to the people of California that we would destroy our own history, our own art history, our own recognition of the real heroes of California. This is something that Governor Newsom and the new chancellor, or the new president really of UC, have to be held accountable for. This is unacceptable. And I hope the supporters of the murals really let Governor Newsom know, and they have the money. It's not really a question of money. And I think that's another thing that's scandalous, that they would demand that the family come up with the money to keep the murals on the campus. I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar operation. There are, I think, $52 billion of excess funds, grants that the university has, and they want the family to come up with money to protect the murals, which are a great treasure of the University of California. The whole story is really scandalous in my view, and I'm glad we're having this discussion, because that is one of the purposes of Labor Fest, to look at our history, working class history, Blacks, the Native Americans, Latinos, all the people of California, the Chinese, and to tell the real story of our history. So maybe we can open it up. If people want to raise their hand, we can have questions or comments, or they could write them down. I mean, Carol Denny wrote, San Francisco, I'm not mistaken, requires 1% of new construction costs to go to public art, even if UCSF considers itself exempt. I would love to know the number represented by 1% of the total cost of this construction project. Any other comments or questions?
This is Laura Bach, and I have a comment and a question. Let's see. Well, the comment is that I reacted rather strongly, Nathan, when you, in talking about Bridget, you said, well, she was a midwife, and that wasn't very much, but she went on to do other and greater things. Actually, being midwives were very big deals, and they were healers, they were medicine people, they did all of women's health issues, and one of the first healers in California was one of Briones in the California Spanish period, whose, of course, farm was in Washington Square, and she went up on Telegraph Hill, and she picked her herbs, and she was sent for from all over the Bay Area to do her healing. So let's give midwives and healers their due. The question I have is, so why does UC want these murals down? Is it for content, or is it for structural? I haven't heard that yet. Thank you.
Okay, well, maybe one of our guests, Robert, do you have any thoughts on that? Or Nathan? I mean, Nathan kind of said that they didn't like the murals. You want to add to that, Robert?
Why? Why is the point?
Yeah, that's the question. Why?
Are you asking Robert Sharons?
Yes.
I have to say I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
From an outsider, thank you, Adam. As an outsider to the university's policies, I believe strongly that oversight by the public to actually see the emails and correspondence and propositions is key. It's not that I don't trust them, but I'd certainly like to see what the answers are to these questions. If you don't know where you're going, you will not know when you get there. The history of this school is based on generosity and opening the school to the public of California. Please don't forget that the mayor of San Francisco, Adolph Sutro, gave 26 acres of the property to the university to put this school for the people of California. Let us not make the future erudite research take over forget the fact that it is the physicians and nurses and pharmacists, dentists for the future of our state. I just rest there.
So do we not know why the university wants them gone? Is it, we don't know if it's because there's objections to content or if there's structural issues?
What they're arguing is they don't have the money. They're saying
They don't have the money to
move them. That's what they're saying.
I can add some information here, Steve.
I can add too.
When I went to medical school in the 60s, my tuition and expenses of the university were paid for by the state of California, 100%. Today, 0%. Therefore, the university is starved for funds, and the University of California competes with Stanford and USC as a private university for the total funds.
This is Adam Gottstein. To answer the question, the building is being torn down.
That is true. But what they're saying is they don't have the money to take care of them and move them to the new building.
Well, yes, but the reason all this has been precipitated is because the building is being demolished to make way for a new building. So basically, UC Medical Center starts out by saying to the descendants of Bernard Zakheim, you folks get them out of here at your own expense. And if you are unable to do it, we'll put it out to the general public in case there's someone else who wants to do it. But either way, the murals have to go. Now, there was talk originally by a spokesperson from the UC Medical Center who once said to Richard Rothman, who is a docent and gives tours or used to at Toland Hall, that the original plan called for tearing down the building around Toland Hall, leaving Toland Hall intact with the murals inside, seismically upgrading Toland Hall, and then rebuilding the new facility around the old Toland Hall. That story was told to Richard Rothman as recently as January or February of this year. And then somewhere along the way, whether it's the designers, the architects, the powers that be, they decided that no, in fact, we're going to tear down Toland Hall, therefore the murals have to go, therefore either the family gets them out or another party gets them out. But yes, they are crying poor mouth when it comes to, we don't have the funds, and during these COVID pandemic times, it's even more difficult. Mind you, they're receiving significant money. They got $500 million from the Diller Foundation. The overall project is probably going to exceed, I'm thinking, don't hold me to this, but close to $2 billion. So $2 billion when Nathan Zakheim and Associates is saying perhaps we could do it for $1 million. Maybe it's even $2 million. But I'd like to think that that money is out there somewhere if the UC Medical Center is not willing to put it up themselves. I hope I've answered the question.
And Richard, you're on, Richard Rothman.
Yeah, hi, this is Richard Rothman. What Adam says is basically true, that I was in conversation with UCSF people. They let me on occasion give tours there. And they always told me that story up till even as late as February, that they were going to build around it. And I got a letter through Brian from saying that they had to change their plan because the walls weren't seismically safe. But for the people who've been in the room, there's a skylight, so it's not covering. Toland Hall isn't on top of another building. You know, it's an empty space above it, and I don't see why they still couldn't build around it. I read the two reports that ARG and the other company put out, and it seems a lot harder just to chip away the back wall and build around it. But I think that's the best solution. But we need to find a way to save them. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Dr.
Steve, can I
Robert
jump
Cherney.
in?
Yeah, Robert Cherney is here, who is the author of the memoir of Victor Arnautoff. Robert, you have something to add to that?
Well, just a bit. I have been in conversation with some of the members of the Community Advisory Board to UCSF. I live in that neighborhood. I've been to a very few meetings of that UCSF calls for its community members. In 2015, just 5 years ago, UCSF adopted a plan that included renovating UC Hall, turning it into residences and offices, and keeping Toland Hall as a community facility for community meetings. And then there was an administrative change at UCSF, and they decided that they had to demolish the existing hospital, and the two older buildings along Parnassus, including UC Hall, which have been under renovation the last several years, are now deemed to be seismically impossible to stabilize, and therefore they have to be demolished as well. And we will have an enormous new facility created on that spot. Those of us who have spent our lives in academia know that there are some academic administrators who build empires. And I have the feeling that that's very much what's going on here. But the Community Advisory Group has been largely opposed to these new plans because they create an enormous facility there without adding any significant number of residences for all of the additional people who are going to be living there. And as a result, it's going to have a serious effect throughout the community around UCSF. So there's a lot of opposition to this, not just because of the murals, but because of the effect on the surrounding community of this new master plan. My understanding is that the environmental impact report will go to the Regents in January. That was the last I heard. And the environmental impact report at last consideration included the Page and Turnbull and the ARG analyses of the murals that state that it's impossible to save them. Just last week, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors Committee on Land Use, chaired by Aaron Peskin, adopted a resolution unanimously to go to the full Board of Supervisors recommending the emergency landmarking of the Zakheim murals as admittedly a gesture to establish their historical and cultural significance, in the hopes that this might affect the thinking of the UC administrators. And one of the administrators was at that Board of Supervisors hearing, and he made very nice. He talked very nicely about the murals. He talked very nicely about all the efforts to save them. We shall see whether that makes any kind of a change at all in the attitude of UCSF. Adam was listening into that. I think there's some other people here who were listening into that Board of Supervisors meetings who might like to comment on it.
Yeah, one of the issues that I think has to be raised here is that at UC, there have been threatened layoffs of 3,000 healthcare workers. In the midst of this pandemic, they're laying off healthcare workers, AFSCME, UPT, and other healthcare workers. And so, and there's competition between UC and Stanford. I mean, the whole capitalist structure of healthcare is not towards healthcare, but competition for profits. And UC San Francisco makes massive amounts of profits. The last I heard, $150 million a year in profits. So I think we're talking about a corporate structure gone mad in development and for more profiteering. And of course, in the course of that, getting rid of this mural, the Zakheim mural, which is part and parcel, I think, of the corporatization, the billionaires who run the UC Regents, who don't represent working people and don't represent the interest, certainly, of telling the real history of California. And that is apparently the case in their effort to destroy these murals and say that they're not planned in the new development that they're going to have. But it is clear the people of San Francisco do not want another massive development right there without the same public transportation and housing for people who are going to work there. So, I mean, these things are very much connected and important to understand in the context of this discussion on the murals.
I'm Harvey Smith. I've been very involved with public art and New Deal art. And I'm also involved with another effort, and it's interesting comparing the two. Both Carol Denny and I are fighting the UC Berkeley in their efforts to build on People's Park in Berkeley. So it's another instance of the university, a university campus, disregarding history, and also in this case, disregarding the need for one of the densest areas in California, which is the south side of Berkeley, to wipe out 2.8 acres of open space. That's another story, but the comparisons are interesting because, as Steve mentioned, there's an increasing corporatization and monetization of UC Berkeley. And also the links, when you start, and I don't understand all of this in terms of UCSF, but I know in the case of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, links with private developers and how they develop these deals to build buildings. So you just have to ask yourself about that. Now, Carol also raised this issue of 1% for art. Well, as we may know, the university is exempt from not only local taxation, but a lot of other rules and regulations. They do have to do their EIRs, however. But I was told, I did some investigation about this, and I was told by a person that was very involved with the public art program at the new Mission Bay campus of UCSF. And it's a very extensive program that they had there. And I asked, well, why is it that that's happening there? And now UCSF wants to destroy historic murals as they rebuild. You know, where is this focus on public art? And I was told that there's been a change in chancellors, and that the chancellor that Mission Bay was built under cared about public art, and the present administration does not care about public art. So I think that might be an answer, or at least a partial answer to what's going on here and why UCSF is not stepping up. The other mention, the other parallel with Berkeley is this push to build and expand a campus and not provide housing. And that's what happened here in Berkeley. The campus went far beyond what they agreed to in their long-range development plan, over-enroll the university, and there's a huge housing crunch. So what we see proposed for the new campus is a similar thing, is that they, as Bob Cherney was pointing out, that they plan on expanding the physical plant there, but not provide the residences to actually house people. So again, creating more pressures in the neighborhood and probably more displacement of people that cannot afford, higher rents. So it's informative. I suggest people tune in this Monday at 5 when we discuss the title of the program is People's Park and the overreach of the University of California at Berkeley.
So Nathan, do you have any additional thoughts about this issue of the whole struggle to protect your father's murals?
That knows more about any of this than all of us put together, and she's sitting there quietly and politely sitting there, named Polina Ilieva. She's the archivist. But what I want to say to begin with is, I'm trying to remember who wrote the book Dune. Do you remember?
No, Dune.
Dune? The movie Dune? Dune? D-U-N-E? You don't know? Oh, crap. Okay, I was looking it up. Anyhow, he and my dad were friends, and I used to hang out when I was 19 years old at his apartment when he was a photo editor for the other newspaper of San Francisco that vanished. And he left me with a quote, which I would like to mention. He said, "Carthago tecte pulve sunt." Even Carthage is now covered by dust. So I appreciate everything that Harvey Smith and everybody's saying, but I mean, you can't look at all the civilizations, they're all built on top of each other. It's going to happen that way, no matter how much we want to preserve things. However, I would also like to say, I hope without too much controversy, I'm 100% I like what they're planning to do with the building. Why? It's going to be like a giant parking garage, empty. The architect's designing the outside of it. Then they get individual people to come in and allocate flexible floor space where they need it. Now, I'm not going to get into the who makes money off of its side. Hopefully, medicine does good for people, hopefully.
I would not be so hopeful, though.
Well, no. I don't take any medicine.
The corruption of the medical industry in this country.
I'm a holistic sort of guy, as you can see by my youthful look. But but the thing is that just say that, we're living on that playing field. If they open up that whole place, they can put in whatever they like. It'll last for a very long time. It will have to be done someday. I don't know when. But preserving the old building is a nightmare, and it will never get not to be a nightmare. Now, having said that, there's going to be so many flexible spaces within the new structure where the murals can be reinstalled. And how do we say reinstalled? You can put them there for 1 year and put them somewhere else for another, because I propose putting the murals inside of steel frames with, I've done this for the art, what's his name? Now I lost his name. The guy that did the Matrix, Joel Silver, and also the Coronado Library in San Diego. You make a steel frame that's engineered, put the fresco panel inside of it, then you put telescoping rods, meaning square telescoping tubes on either side, and then build a inexpensive drywall steel stud structure around it in a semicircle. You want to move it in 5 years? Hey, move it in 5 years. It moves. You know, you take the murals out of the frame, take the tubes up down, put them somewhere else, and put up your fake wall again, and you're all set. So that's one thing. The other, so I'm actually, I want to live long enough to see the murals taken out of Toland Hall. Why? Because they can't stay there forever. They're not going to stay there for 100 years or 500 years or 1,000 years. They're not going to stay there. This is my lifetime. I'm 76. Don't tell anybody that or they won't let me do the work. I want to take them out. I want to put them in such a way that they can be moved around wherever they want in the new building inside of a common use areas. Now, when I asked the chancellor, well, I want to talk to the architect. He said, oh, there is no architect. I couldn't understand that. I said, you're doing all this building and you don't have an architect yet? But they have an architect for the structure. It's like a, a parking lot, a parking structure where you park your cars next to in a modern building, right? And then they're going to put little campouts inside of there with roofs and ceilings and stuff, flexible. And if they want to change it in 100 years, flexible, they can do it. If they want to move the frescoes, move them. It'll cost them $100,000 maybe to move them into a new location. Nothing. So that's what I'm going to say. Why are they tearing it down? I have had, and I want to bring Paulina in now if it's going to be possible.
Paulina is
she's still here.
She's still here.
She's here. Okay, great. She's wonderful. So what is it? Over the decades, I've been approached by the university saying we have seismic issues with Toland Hall. Not just one, not just twice, 3 times at least. And they said, could you make designs for removing the frescoes or reinforcing them? I said, yeah, they were designed to be taken out by my dad. When I was 10 years old, as I said, he said, Nathan, there they are. And he showed me how to do it. No problem, just take the columns out in between. Now, to get to the basic point is that now's the time to take them out. In my lifetime, I know how to do it. And even if they don't pick me to do it, I would like to be in charge of telling them how to do it. So they do it, it'll be a perfect success and they can be reinstalled shortly in the new building. Now, Paulina has several iterations of my proposals for taking out those murals over the decades. Is it possible that Paulina could make a comment?
Okay, Paulina, why don't you join the discussion if you're interested? Paulina? We're trying to ask.
She's
her.
there.
She's there.
Unless it's a photograph of her.
Yeah, there's a photograph of her. I'm asking her.
Is that her photograph?
Asked to unmute. Paulina, can you join us? Maybe she's unavailable.
It's a photograph. I kept looking and said, that's amazing. That lady is amazing. She is stoic. She hasn't moved once since we started this whole thing. Well, it could be she's not there then. Anyhow, is there anything you want to know that's been addressed by others that I could focus in on?
I think we have gotten a lot of useful information at this discussion about the panels and the fact that they can be moved and they can stay in any new building. But again, the question is why are they not interested in really protecting and saving this important history of medicine?
That is a question which I cannot answer. Why did they hire 2 firms to say they couldn't be taken out when they can? And why did they ask me to ask if they could be taken out, considering that Paulina, if she were only there, has several iterations of proposals for taking them out over the decades? There's something fishy there, and I don't know what the fishy is.
Maybe we have to investigate that further. So that's something that has to be discovered.
All in all, they're doing a RFP. That means request for proposals. God only knows what that'll turn into. But I'm going to try to insist that the proposal make the murals first do the aesthetic work of the mural in situ, in the location. You consolidated. They said, oh, they're broken, they're water damaged, whatever. You fix all that from the front first, and then you tip it forward on a thick drawbridge, like in a castle, and then you take off the stuff at the back. Then you saturate that with resins. Then you put steel on the back, put that on with fiberglass, and you put plywood. Make a crate, pick them up, and put them under your arm and run out the door. Can I say one more thing?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that is, and I don't want to take up all the time, but I checked out, and anyone can go there and check out the website, the chancellor's office, everything like that. It's completely open as far as open. I mean, it's not really open, but at least you find out who's who and what's what, and who you can talk to if you want to. There's 2 donors, private foundations, that are putting up close to $1.5 or $1.25 billion each. If they if I can't go to the tin cup and say, could you drop $1 million into there and maybe another 200,000 to reinstall them? Why wouldn't they? You know, I mean, it's just absurd that they wouldn't. So that's one thing. And the fact is they can be reinstalled easily in the new building, and there's no way they can say, oh yeah, I just sent out something to a number of people, unfortunately not you, which stated that they're going to have them in a place where they can be prominently displayed on video. I said, okay, I'll do one better. Instead of displaying them prominently on video, why not probably display them as they are? And if you want to move them, just unbolt them from the floor. They have, neoprene pads. Unbolt them from the floor, take them out with a forklift or something, move the whole thing over, bolt it back down, put them back in, and hey, there you are.
There it is. And Carol Denny said,
So,
everyone.
I think it's easy to solve and not expensive from the university point of view.
So Carol Denny
And
said,
by the way, the last thing, I don't object to their $8 million quote, because that's the sort of thing greedy conservators like to charge. But I can do it for less than $1 million.
I know
and I can do it properly.
That's very clear. So Carol Denny said to everyone, this is a magnificent scandal, which I agree with Carol. It is a scandal, and I think we'll be successful in protecting those murals and making sure that they're part of any new additions or changes in the UC Medical Center. So in the midst of this pandemic and this depression that we're going on in California, I think that protecting our historic art is critical to the people of California.
Can I say one short point on the actual mural on the picture Labor First used?
Yes.
That when you look at the mural, all those scholars and doctors standing up, shuffling the papers and arguing, and this Mason, the only the woman there, actually on the ground and ready to work with their arms, in the movement. She's the one on the ground to do it, but all the men are standing up and shuffling the papers and arguing. Very interesting. I think this is one point that I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And we have a message from Laura Valson, George. Interestingly, the cost estimates in both studies is not in the PDFs that were released. We don't know how much they estimated. It is UCSF that stated the cost is at $8 million. So I want to thank you again, all of you, for joining us on Labor Fest. And if you have ideas for future events during Labor Fest next year, please let us know. And thanks for your support.